welcome to our 2024 annual meeting. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge some of the folks who have come here who aren't direct members. We have two members of Washington Electric's Co-ops Board. As you probably know, Washington Electric and Vermont Electric are the only two co-ops or co-op utilities in Vermont. So for Washington Electric, we have Don Douglas. I don't know where Don is. There he is down the back. Board member for VEC, and Steve Farnham, also a board member for VEC. I think we have a few folks scheduled to come, some legislators. Just didn't want to miss this meeting, but they were up until 1 a.m. this morning, so I don't think they're going to. Also, we have a few vendors. Efficiency Vermont is here. They're one of our key partners in trying to move more and more of our members to electrical devices from their own desk back there. Please, stop by. There's some great giveaways. What do they call it? Swag. Make sure you bring your bag. And we also have the robotics team from Westford here. They have their own table down there. The robotics team was one of the recipients of a community fund grant. And they use that community fund grant money to do some really interesting stuff. So they've got some examples, and they have some placards down there. You can go down and see what they've done. They did some really interesting things over the last 2 years. Also, a plug for our community fund. If you haven't joined the community fund so far, it's a really great way to give back to the community in real dollars. There's several ways that VEC accumulates dollars for that, through Roundup, through direct donations, through capital credits, and they can kind of walk you through that at the back of the community fund table. So please stop by and talk to them and pick up some swag and save dollars to the community. So today's meeting, I think we had a slide up there earlier, but let me just give you a quick overview. From a technical point of view, based on our bylaws, we have a business meeting. We'll do a relatively short business meeting. In that, we will approve last year's minutes. We will give a treasurer's report. We'll reveal the results of this year's 2024 director elections. And then we will adjourn that particular meeting, and we will move on to a presentation on the powering up for a reliable and a resilient future. I know, you all feel the humidity, the rain, the snow that and the floods that we've had over the past year, 2 years. There'll be an interesting discussion there with some key experts from VEC and outside. Rebecca Town, our CEO, will lead that. And then we'll wind down with our raffle drawing. Hopefully you all got raffle tickets on the way in. Make sure you stay through that. There's some great gifts. And finally, after the raffle drawing, we will award our door prize, which is a Weber electric grill. I can't remember the brand name, Weber's the brand, but it's a really interesting grill. It's in the back there. It's been donated by Smugs. And speaking of Smugs, they are our hosts here today. I'd like to thank them for allowing us to not only convene in this room, but at breakfast upstairs, and hope you were able to partake in that. So first off, I'd like to introduce the board of directors. From District 1, we have Don Worth. I don't think Don is with us today. I think he's coming back from South Carolina. From District 3, we have Carol Maroney. Carol, where are you? There you are. From District 4, we have Mark Woodward. From District 5, we have Charlie Van Winkle. From District 6, we have Paul Lampert. Our East Zone 1 representative is Tom Bailey. Our East Zone 1 second representative is George Legou. And then our West Zone 1 representative is Jody Dunkley, our secretary. Our West Zone 2 representative is Ken Hopner. Ken, are you here today? I haven't seen him. Oh, Ken is sick, okay. And our third West Zone director is Bonnie Pratt. Where are you, Bonnie? She's back there. One of our directors resigned mid-season, John Ward. He decided to make the move from Vermont to Florida. And he had been with us for quite a long time, so we thank him for his service for many years. Now, we're going to move on to our standard safety presentation by John Varney. As you know, VEC is really very conscious of safety. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but right now, John, I hand it over to you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So, I always start every meeting at Vermont Electric, all department meetings, every session with a safety moment. It just reinforces and emphasizes how critical and important safety is to us as an organization. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about safety tips around your house and standard things that you do. So if you look at this opening title, you might think, what in the world does he mean by packing a parachute? Well, I'll mention, I thought this was a perfect analogy to, if you ever jump out of an airplane and you put a darn parachute, there's some things you want to make sure that you do, and that's always doing everything the right thing. You take the time that you need to do it correctly. You get all the correct materials, and if you really don't know what you're doing and you're just kind of winging it, probably want to ask for some advice or at least read the instructions. All right, so first of all, just a couple comments about ladders, used all of the time. This is the bad, for both a step ladder and a string ladder. So this year when I was putting this together, they said, just don't emphasize the bad. Why don't you show some good stuff too? So this is the good stuff. I'm not going to stand up here and read every single safety tip. I'll just highlight a couple things. First and foremost is just stability of a straight ladder. For every 4 feet you go up, 1 feet back. So if you go in 12 feet in the air, the bottom should be positioned about 3 feet backwards. 3 feet above the landing point or above that eave. And you just want to make sure that you're on nice stable ground. In wintertime, that can be a challenge, speaking from experience when I'm chopping ice off my roof. But I do make the extra effort to make sure that ladder's not going to go anywhere. 2 points of contact, and then finally, when you're up on the ladder doing work, try to stay in the center. Keep your center of gravity of your body on top of the rungs, just to make sure that you're stable. Tools. Always use the right tool for the job. You know, what happens if this person slips? And there's always the right tool for the job. You just may not have it. You have to run down to your local hardware store to pick one up. And I want to use an example of, there's 5 different types of screwdrivers. You know, so if you have a certain fastener, you know, you might want to go down and pick up the right screwdriver for the job. Hammers. How many buddies ever smashed their fingers before? All right. So first of all, try to use a hammer and not try to jury rig it with some other tool. That's just a sure disaster waiting to happen. And even when you got the right hammer, you know, technique is everything. Try to get that nail started first with a few taps so you can back your finger away. This is one of my favorites. Near dear to my heart. because at home, every time I picked up a knife, my wife would cringe because I have a history of my fingers. So actually, I went to a cooking class about a year ago, and I learned a lot of things, which I know. I'm a little bit old, and I never knew the proper way to use a chef knife. So I thought this was pretty interesting. You know, just note the positions, especially where your fingers are with respect to the where you put the tip of the blade when you're chopping. All right, in mechanical devices we trust completely, right? So I put this up just to make sure that you have, if you're going to jack up your car, you want to make sure that the jack is rated for the job. It's got the tonnage that you need. It's in good physical condition. And my real plug is don't completely trust these things. Don't get your body underneath the car to do work. Try to stay outside at all times, just in case that jack were to fail. Riding lawnmowers are probably one of the few devices or pieces of equipment you have around your house that has interlocks. How many people are aware of people that bypass that interlock that's underneath the seat? I see some hands. Please don't. Those are there for a reason. That's to keep you safe if you need to get off the mower while it's running. It automatically shuts off the deck so you don't go mucking around with the lower deck while it's still running. And a personal plug, please, oops, backwards. Please keep these guards on the chute in place. I know every time I drive around Vermont, I see people mowing their lawns and taking that chute off. There's more efficiency and a better mowing job if they take that off. Well, in the meantime, they're shooting off rocks and other things out of the deck. And anybody have a car that's been hit by one of these things? Kind of aggravating. So keep that guard on there. We all value hearing, so when you use the weed whackers, lawnmowers, anything with a fairly high noise level, let's wear some hearing protection. All right. Very good. Number 2, heating equipment that refers to your furnaces and pellet stoves, etc. Electrical distribution, lighting equipment is a tie for arson, which is kind of surprising to me. Smoky materials, getting down to the bottom of the list. Years past, dryer vents, the lint buildup, that used to be on this list, but that's kind of dropped off. And unattended lit candles used to be on the list. That's dropped off too. But don't forget about those as a potential cause for a fire too. So I'm not going to stand up here and read all these things. What I have is back on our safety table that Sarah's picking up right now. If anybody is interested for recommendations on where to place smoke detectors, heat detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, we've got a copy of this diagram back on the safety table. Slips, trips, and falls. If you see an obstacle that's in the walking path, please pick it up. Water, coffee, juice, anything that spills on the floor, especially if it's a linoleum or a hardwood floor, please clean it up. Now I see this all the time at work, especially in the wintertime where people track in snow and ice, and now next thing you know, we got somebody slipping in the hallways coming into their desk. What are our phones? As everybody in here knows, you're not supposed to drive and use your cell phone, right? The one thing that drives me crazy is people that are going down, they're walking, they're glued to their cell phone, and they don't even see you coming at them, and boom, collide together. So if you're moving, if you're walking around trying to get someplace, put the cell phone down. It can wait for a minute. How many people love tailgaters? So, open question. Do you think the guy in the back is going to get to the destination 5 seconds quicker because he's tailgating? It just doesn't make any sense. I think you all realize that if that leading car stops, boom, now you've got a collision. So, everybody familiar with the 3-second rule? Good. So, just quickly, in case you're not, if you're driving along, pick up something along the roadside up ahead. Let's say it's a mailbox or a tree. Car in front of you goes by it, count to 3. You shouldn't you should be passing that no earlier than when you hit 3. Finally, electricity around your house, there's a reason for that grounding plug. Don't cut it off, please. Oh, but I only have a 2-slot wall outlet. Well, you can get an adapter as long as you take the trouble to send the ground to the ground. Frayed wires, that's an accident waiting to happen. Finally, these power strips. Just one comment, don't piggyback them, they're not made to be piggybacked. By that, I mean, you plug one in, you plug another one in, you plug another one in. And the same is true for extension cords. You gotta be really careful to not piggyback extension cords back to back to back. They're not really rated to do that. Lithium batteries, something we've learned at the co-op recently in talking to the tool manufacturer is that there have been fires with lithium batteries on their chargers. So best practice that we enacted is once your lithium battery is fully charged, take it off the charge. We've actually saw that at the co-op in one of our garages. One of our lithium battery chargers caught fire, and we were thankfully able to catch it in time, but it can happen. And of course, safety guy and utility has to bring up down trees on power lines. Back in December, we had 4 consecutive storms, followed by 2 storms in the 1st of January. In each one of those storms, we've had members try to move trees off of power lines. You don't know if that power line is energized or de-energized. So if you come up there and move that tree, there's a strong likelihood that it's in fact charged, and when you try to move it, you're going to get a severe shock or electrocuted. So please, please, don't try to move these trees off of power lines and get out of your way. Call us first. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I know at least for myself, I'm probably guilty of 90% of those errors that John pointed out. Specifically the knife cutting one. I've had so many stitches in that finger. Anyway, so we ended 2023 in a very good position for the co-op. Prior to that, the previous few years were tough. With COVID, with the financial situation, supply lines were backed up. Labor was really hard to deal with. There were just so many problems coming out of that in 2019, 2020. But I think we righted the ship in 2023. I'd like to highlight just a couple of strong points from my point of view for 2023. First, in 2021, VEC set its sights on a cleaner power supply for our vendors. And we decided to divide that into 2 distinct goals. First, we would go with carbon-free, and we came up with a carbon-free by 23 slogan. And second, we said we would be all renewable by 2030. And I'm happy to report that the first goal, carbon-free by 2023, was met. So 2023 was the first year that VEC essentially had carbon-free power supply to all of our members. It wasn't easy. There's lots of things going on in the background, many more than even I am aware of, but the team took that goal to heart, and they just made it happen. So thank you very much to the power supply team that made that happen, but also to everyone else. Now we're on to renewable by 2030, and that will be another challenge. But I think we have a good start, we have a good base to go from, and I'm looking forward to that happening as well. Secondly, the co-op's financial position is very strong. again, coming out of 2019, 2020, things were tough, whether it was COVID, inflation, supply problems. And as a result, we had to raise the rate a few times. We did it in the minimal amount as possible to keep the co-op afloat, keep it financially strong. And I can say as of last year, we are in a very strong financial position. Our credit ratings are steady, and they're in the gold category. And I thank the financial team led by Caroline for that. They did a fantastic job. And lastly, as John kind of alluded to, safety is built into the co-op's work ethic. VEC has had a great safety record for many years. And I'm happy to report in 2023 that VEC was named Green Mountain VPP for the second year in a row. The VPP designation is a big deal. It essentially says that we've done everything we can to be the safest environment to work in, and we work in a very, I shouldn't say but our team works in a very dangerous environment. Electricity can be really dangerous. And led by John and his team, we were able to get this VPP for the second year in a row, and I think we're the only company in Vermont to do that. Is that what, John? 3 others? But it's a very small group. So that is the rating on that is the exemplary occupational safety and health record is what that a VPP designation says. So thanks to John and his team, and it does take a team to make that happen, because everyone on the team, and that's just not the line workers, that's the workers in the office, the workers in the meter readers, whatever, all have to adhere to those standards. And then based on the measurements that we submitted at the end of the year, we were awarded with that second VPP gold medal. And then I'd like to just conclude by thanking the entire VEC staff for a great 2023. VEC's goal is to deliver safe, reliable, and affordable power. And I think we accomplished that goal in 2023. So thank you to the Board of Directors for their steady hand in overseeing the strategic direction of VEC. Thanks to the senior leadership team for expertly managing the day-to-day operations of a very complex environment. Thanks to the line crews for maintain, fix, extend VEC's poles, wires, transformers, substations, you name it, they're out there, 24/7, in the rain, in the snow, in the wind, in the floods. They're out there to keep essentially all of our pieces going. And then last but far from least is the office crew. The office crew that they may not be on the lines, they may not be driving to the substations to reset a breaker or something, but they are the ones that stitch everything together. They stitch all of the pieces, all the moving parts. There are a lot of moving parts that essentially is needed to run an electric utility like ours, and it keeps the lights on for all of us. So thank you to that entire team for a great 2023. I think we're off to a great start for 2024, and we'll try to report back next year. Thank you. So now I'm meeting over to our secretary, Jody Dunkley, and she has a few business items to go through.
Good morning. I'm going to start by reading the quorum certification. I, Jody Dunkley, Secretary of the Board of Vermont Electric Cooperative Incorporated, do hereby certify the total number of members voting either by mail or by another method permitted by law and the VEC bylaws as of the day of the annual meeting is 3,174, and that by number exceeds the quorum of 100 members as required by the VEC bylaws, and therefore this meeting can be legally held, or legally begin. And now I'm going to read the affidavit, mailing affidavit that indicates that the notice of this meeting was sent to all the members. I, Jody Dunkley, Secretary of the Board of the Vermont Electric Cooperative, do hereby certify that a copy of the notice hereto attached relative to this annual meeting and to the members of the Vermont Electric Cooperative to be held at Smuggler's Notch Resort for 4323 Vermont Route 108 South, Jeffersonville, Vermont on Saturday, May 11th, 2024 was duly mailed to each member of the cooperative on April 15th, 2024, in the manner prescribed by the bylaws. Now I can either read those notices at the annual meeting, or I can waive the reading of the notice at the annual meeting with a motion by a member. Does anyone want to make a motion to waive the notice of the May 11, 2024 annual meeting? Thank you. And your name and your town. Thank you, Cindy. And do we have a second? And your name and town? Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. And the motion passes. And at this time, I would like to request a motion to approve the minutes from the 2023 annual meeting. I'll accept a motion by the member to approve the 2023 meeting minutes. Thank you. Over there, your name? Thank you. And a second? There.
Gerard Elliott, Cambridge.
Thank you. Any discussion? The motion passes. Oh, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Then the motion passes. And I think that's all I have to do. At this time, I will turn it over to Charlie Van Winkle for the Treasurer's Report.
Thank you, Jody. So I'm a representative from District 5, which is primarily Chittenden County. Sometimes it's known as the eastern side or southeastern side of our territory. So this is the 2024 annual meeting Treasurer's Report. We started out pretty good. We have an A+ rating from the regulatory people as well as Standard & Poor's. A lot of the information contained in my report is available in the KBS or Cadell, Brannigan, and Sargent audits report. That report is up on our website if you so desire to check any facts or numbers that are presented today. As you know, our co-op's member-driven. We're a nonprofit with the intent to serve our members. We try to be nonprofit by making cost-effective decisions, controlling our operating costs. We have a good management team involved and good financial oversight. As I said before, this is the KBS auditors. Again, their reports on our website. So our numbers for 2023. There we are. Our numbers for 2023, we had about 93 million, almost 94 million in revenue. We have almost 93 million in expenses, and we netted out with $1 million in operating revenue, or income from operations. Some of our other sources of income include proceeds from the Payroll Protection Plan, interest and dividends, and other capital credits and dividends. So we had a total of other income of $7.5 million. If you add these two together, less our interest expense, we net out the year at about 4.1 million. Some of the costs that are driving our expenses, we paid 45 million for power in 2023, up a little bit from 2022. But contrasting to the year before, 2021, we're down, so to speak. Power's still going up, power supply costs are still going up, but overall, it's not going up as steeply as it used to be. This is one of the sources of income that the co-op uses or has. Transco is the Vermont Electric Distribution Network, otherwise known as VELCO. Right? Being a distribution utility and not having too many generation assets, we buy power from somewhere else. That power gets shipped to us or to your district over Transco lines, and then our distribution network brings it out to your house. It costs money to transport power over those lines, and we pay VELCO for the power, but we also get a return on that investment. A pretty healthy return, as you can see. This is our long-term debt commitments. We have about 99 million in current long-term debt. Less the current installments brings us down to about 94 million. There's a whole lot of information in the KPS report on the long-term debt commitments, where they're going, how much they are year by year, if you're interested. One of the other things that we do as a co-op is we return money in terms of patronage capital to our members. Right? So far, year to date, we've returned about $12.5 million of member capital back to you folks. Right? 10 years to date, sorry. We didn't give out $12 million this year, sorry. It'd be nice, but we didn't do that. Some of our capital investments this year, or in 2023, that is, we invested approximately $12 million in capital investments. New wires, new poles, not the ones that get blown down during the storms, but circuits that are underperforming, that kind of stuff. This is a team that makes it all happen. I'm sorry, I'm missing a slide. Anyway, we have a good team that does the work, and I'll entertain a motion to accept the treasurer's report. Your name and town, sir? Bruce Carter. Is there a second? In the back.
Robin Clark from Lowell.
Robin Clark from Lowell. Is there any discussion on the treasurer's report? Hearing no discussion, is there all in favor say aye? Aye. Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. I'm going to turn the meeting back to Jody. Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to announce the elections for the directors for 2024. So we had a great pool of candidates this year, and I would like to thank everybody for participating. As a democratic process, we are all owners of the co-op, and this is a great opportunity for anybody to participate, and it's I can say from my experience, it's been an excellent opportunity to serve the community. One second. All right, so for District 2, we have a new director who's filling in the vacant position. Welcome, Jeffrey Wilson. For District 7, Rich Goggin will continue. And for Easton at Large is George Legou and Weston at large, Ken Hoffner. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Rich.
Thanks, Jody. Thanks, Jody. And thank you to all those who participated in this year's election. It is as Jody mentioned, it is a democratic process. Anyone can run for director, and it's if you do get elected, it's a very rewarding. There's so much information that you figure out. So next year at this time, if anyone looks to wants to run as director, please think about it seriously, and feel free to contact myself or any other directors or Rebecca if you need more information about that and to find out a little bit more what's involved. So at this time, I'd like to adjourn the business meeting of the co-op. Can I have a motion to adjourn? And your name? Bruce Parr. A second?
I waved to you, but you didn't.
Say again?
Where's Rebecca?
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Those in any nays?
Thank you for coming.
No nays?
Yeah, well, I was a
Okay,
little late, so I didn't get in.
the meeting is now officially adjourned, and we'll move on to the presentation after the meeting. I'm going to turn things over to our CEO, Rebecca Town.
All right, good morning, everyone. Got all those important official things out of the way. So now we get to talk more about the work that we do. And I just have 5 minutes of comments, and then we'll get going with our panel talking about climate and resiliency, which we did a webinar on that a couple months ago. Great information, great engagement, so I know you'll really enjoy that. I grew up in Cambridge, so it's always nice to be back here for part of my childhood. My mother actually worked banquets here in the meeting hall, so I have lots of memories of coming off the ski hill and clomping in my ski boots and talking my way into a Shirley Temple and saying hi to my mom and then heading back out. So it seemed a lot bigger when I was younger, but lots of memories here, and so glad that Smuggler's Notch hosts us and has been a critical part of my life and a critical part of our community. So really happy to be here. And I said I grew up in Cambridge. My dad's here. Morning, Dad. Came down the way. My grandfather, my mom actually sent me something recently. She's still clearing out all of his records. Was an integral part of starting the co-op. He was a farmer, Harold Putnam, again in Cambridge, and he was so excited about power coming that he volunteered to talk to other farmers and talk to them about getting easements and the value of electricity. So when he found out that I was making a career in the energy business, he was so excited because he has long been a proponent. And it's such a reminder to me as I think about that you've heard a lot today about thank you to the staff and the team, and it is and has always been about the people in the community. From the start of the co-op to where we are now, that's really what makes all of this happen. So I'm delighted that there are so many of our community members here today, and that we're going to be able to talk more about what the next opportunity in terms of continuing to bring reliable power to you looks like. You've heard a lot of thanks. I would just say, our board is excellent. They put in a ton of time and energy. We had a really robust election with a lot of people running for seats. I'd like to take the opportunity to meet with every single one of them, and all of them, without a doubt, say, I'm interested in serving on the board because I care about my community, and I see electricity as such an integral part of that. So they show up, they put in a lot of time and energy. They spend a lot of time learning about our complex business, and they do great work. Also, our employees, our talented team, you saw a lot of them here today. Thank you for everyone who put in so much time and energy to make this day happen. and just one of the many, many things that we do throughout the year. Our team is just, they're awesome. Every day I get humbled by how smart they are, how much they care, and the hard work that they do. And I want to take a quick moment someone is leaving our organization, VEC Brown, who's been our general counsel for years. She really encouraged me to apply for this position and was someone, before I came and worked at VEC, I long admired in the energy industry. And then I came to work at VEC and just realized what an incredible trusted advisor, mentor, just all around great person she is. And so she will be missed. She's leaving us in a much better place than when she joined as general counsel, and so her legacy will certainly live on in the work that we do, and we wish her the best. So. We also have so many partners, so it's not just our employees. We work with vendors all over the place. One of them, Darlene's Delectables, made the chocolates for you today. They're pretty delicious. They're hard to open, but worth it. So I encourage you to try. But we have, our partners are everything from tree trimmers to drone pilots to engineers to people who serve us food during storms. So again, it takes a community to make all of this happen, and we're so thankful for those folks. And then, of course, our members. Our members are our owners. You are consumers, but you also own us. And increasingly, as we are changing the world around us, our members are becoming an extended part of the grid, not just consumers, but also being able to manage those devices, particularly EV chargers and batteries, and hopefully more devices over time, is extending what our grid looks like and how we think about that. So just last month, we have about 200 residences that are engaged with our load management program, and then also lots of larger commercial customers, so that when a peak happens, we're able to either stop the EV from charging or start the battery for deploying. That helps us reduce our peaks. And it not only saves us money by not using power when it's most expensive, but it also, eventually, we are hopeful that those load management programs can help us reduce the cost, avoid having to build new infrastructure, even as we're experiencing load growth over time. So, I forgot the clip. There's the clip. Yeah. All right, great photo of our team at our office up in Newport. I did just want to mention, you guys have heard a bit about the financials today, and this chart is, this is not a fun chart for me because I started in 2018, so this has been tough from a financial perspective. Of course, COVID has played a big part in that, but also COVID and inflation, and then really power supply costs, particularly in the last couple years, have been extraordinarily high. And you heard from Rich that we are in a good financial position. I just want to make sure that you know that took an incredible amount of time and energy to make sure that we're in a solid financial position. We have a lot of debt, and when we don't hit our financial metrics more than 1 year in a row, it really starts to impact our ability to get low-cost debt. So it's important that we have a strong financial position. Even with these rate increases, we have done extraordinary cutting of our budgets, both before we filed for the rate increase, and then the last couple years, actually mid-year, we got even more negative financial news that have required us to make some really tough decisions about how we spend our money, while making sure we're still investing in the long-term financial viability of the system and the co-op. So I don't have more to say except just please know that those rate increases were, we know, very tough for our members, and were hard for us too, and we take them very seriously. The good news is, just so far this year, power supply costs have come down for the first time in years over the winter. Just a little, not dramatically, but enough that it's like, woohoo, it's exciting. It's finally going a little bit the other direction. It looks like inflation and some of those other pressures, hopefully interest expense, will start to go the other direction. So we will continue to do everything that we can to make sure that we are keeping our eye on both financial stability, but also hopefully the least impact on rates as possible. And then the last thing I just want to talk about is just some of the challenges that we're experiencing. You'll hear much more as Jay and Peter dive into climate change and resiliency. But when the board hired me 5 years ago, I remember in the interview, they were saying, like, I think the next 10 years in energy are going to be the most exciting. And I've been in energy 25 years, and I will say, yes, the last 5 of those 10 have indeed been the most exciting that I've worked in. I think the next 5 and probably the next 5 after that, there's extraordinary change happening. It's exciting, but it's also challenging. So I look forward to working with this team to navigate through. A few of those things, one, energy transformation. So as we decarbonize, we're really seeing a lot of growth in electric vehicles and also in heat pumps. So those are driving a lot of load. We think it's going to be about 30% over the next 20 years. So that's pretty significant. We haven't seen growth like that in maybe since the start of the co-op. So and outside of New England, we're starting to see data centers driving load even more than that. And while that's not in our service territory, that will impact our power supply across the country, and something important to keep in mind. It's a good opportunity, but again, thinking about how do we affordably and reliably serve that load from an infrastructure perspective and then also from a power supply perspective, those are things we'll be working on. At the same time, our power supply is moving to renewables, to clean energy. We're excited about our commitment. Lots of other folks have that same commitment. Moving to that renewable power supply is going to look like a lot more intermittent power. So solar and wind, the sun doesn't shine, the wind doesn't blow all the time. It's a different way of thinking about the grid. And being able to navigate that, and again, having the poles and wires and the technology to be able to manage that in a way that's completely seamless to the end consumer is something that we'll be continuing to work on over the next few years too. And then finally, that piece around reliability. So our improvements and investments in reliability have been significant and will continue to be significant, even while we're experiencing that people's expectations about reliability are increasing faster than our capability to improve that, particularly as the climate is getting a little zanier, let's say, non-technical term, Jay. And so that's sort of an intro to diving into introducing Peter and Jay for them to talk about it. But I will just leave you with this, is we certainly have our challenges cut out for us. I'm really excited that we have a great team and partners who are going to work on that. And I remain optimistic about our ability to navigate through these things and make for an exciting next 5 years. So with that, let me introduce Peter Rossi, who's our Chief Operating Officer at Vermont Electric Co-op. He is the one, so the reliability pieces, the poles and wires, the infrastructure, the storm response, as well as many other things, land squarely under his realm of responsibility. And Dr. Jay Schaefer, who has been a critical partner for us, he's a weather expert, and he helps us understand how weather will impact us, both in sort of the next storm in an immediate way, but also into the future and how we need to be thinking about that. So let's get rolling.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm trained as a meteorologist, and although we focused on weather on the Earth, last night was exceptional. Did anyone see the Northern Lights last night? Yes. Okay. Tonight is a good chance for Northern Lights with this very significant solar storm activity. I want to also start out with just a little experience on this winter and some weather we have. How many of you were lucky enough to not have any power outages, 0 power outages this winter season? Well, that's pretty good. How about at least one storm you lost power for any duration? 1 storm, 2 storms, 3 storms. I'm putting my own hand up for that. Yep. 4 storms, 5 storms. Okay, I think we're at 4. All right. Hopefully you guys, okay, we had a 5. Is there a 6? Okay, we're at 5. So 5, keep those numbers in mind because weather is very local. You can see just from this crowd, weather is very local. So I've lived in Vermont about 20 years and over in the kingdom. And I'll talk about some extreme weather, what we do with VEC to help them prepare for storms and the future. I'm going to skip through getting a little bit more local here. The climate is warming. It's a very high confidence direction we're all heading in. You can see that this past winter season, we had well above all this warm shading here is where we had warmer temperatures than average. We had the warmest winter season on historical record since we've been keeping reliable records going back well over 100 years. And we also had one of the wettest. So warm and wetter storms, if there's one big takeaway here, that's where we're heading. And winter season is changing the fastest for us. For many of us who've lived here, probably seen that and can experience that firsthand. So the United States also had the warmest winter season on record. This means we're going to have, and we are having, more thaws, less reliable snow cover, more backward springs or ping pong springs when the weather is more variable during the springtime. And the storm damage season is also expanding, as I'll talk about here. As storms are getting warmer, the snowfall that occurs is more wet. Wet snow causes more problems. Okay, speaking of which, historically, looking at the VEC system for a 9-year period in power outages, the fall storm season usually causes the greatest power outage impacts because we don't have as much seasonal resilience built into the system. Fall storms can be pretty big, pretty powerful. You can see we had some wind storms in here. Wind, wet snow, and the 2013 ice storm is also on this. We have unfortunately seen with shifting climate is that the last few winters, and this winter was a good case for this, is that warmer winters are less resilient to power outages. So winter storm, I'm going to talk about Finn and Jerry, those 2 windstorms we had, and wet snow a little bit in there. On this graph, you see that January is a pretty strong signal that the storm season from the fall is essentially creeping into the winter with the warming climate. And thunderstorms, we don't get as much, it's more localized here. We don't see strong signal for thunderstorms increasing in intensity with climate. Where are we going? Well, we're only going to keep getting warmer here. A lot of the warming in the climate system is already baked into it because of the lifetime of carbon dioxide and the high carbon economy we're currently in. Despite our best efforts here locally and whatnot, we all have to do what we can. But another 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit of warmth through 2050. So you can see we're going to keep climbing, most likely between the red and the orange line there. So the seasonal change, we see that winter is warming twice as fast as the other seasons. So we'll continue to experience more, what was the word you used, Rebecca? Zany winters, or I like to call it seasonal shenanigans, okay? My scientific. So here we go. Speaking of seasonal shenanigans, like as I said there, retreating cold, expanding warmth, that combination creates more variability, especially in springtime. We could be 70 degrees and sunny in May, but snow, we can also have that. That variability has always been pretty high in our climate zone, but that variability is going to increase with climate. Because we're seeing these seasonal changes, the frequency change of storms, the risk is becoming greater with more wet snow. So the storm season widening creates more risk there. And we know one of the other strong signals is that when it does rain, when it does snow, storms are slowing down and they're getting wetter. And wetter storms produce, well, more stuff, whether it's rain or more wet snow, and that causes more challenges. And that can make predictability harder. One of the questions I get often is that, okay, weather science is getting better, yes. Some storm morphologies are easier to predict, some are harder, but wetter and slower moving storms can be harder to predict. The November 27th, 28th wet snowstorm was a good example. We just all missed that in the meteorological community. And then, not surprisingly, you put all this together, this makes prediction and makes storm behavior more complex. More multi-hazard events where you can have wind and wet snow. And VEC's survey territory is very geographically wide, and you'll see for one of the storms, we had both wind and wet snowfall depending on where you were, east or west of the Green Mountains. Okay, VELCO sponsored this climate report we did about 3 years ago. And there's a lot on this diagram here. Essentially, anything towards the top right is high confidence, increasing risk. So heat and the growing season expanding, heavy precipitation events, we would expect a greater frequency of that in our climate shifts. less extreme cold, and snowfall is eventually going to come down. We're cold enough here to still hold on to a lot of snowfall, but we're going to continue to get a lot of interruptions of that snowfall. Wet snow increasing faster than any other hazard here from a power outage standpoint. Ice storms and thunderstorms, the science isn't as clear, so probably going sideways on those from a risk standpoint. Seasonal drought, I think that's probably a relatively small signal there, but what we are seeing for warmth and drought is that late summer into early fall will tend to have drier periods, like seasonal drought. Okay, so I work in the weather prediction space, is how we started this engagement with VEC. Now we're working more in the planning and climate. This was Winter Storm Finn. And this is an example of the kind of products and analytics that we provide Peter Rossi and his team to help them prepare for storms. They're making really high stakes mutual aid decisions, when to stage people, where to have people on call, when to pull in all the extra people that can do different things, functions within the organization. And this example shows over 4 forecast runs leading up to, this is 4 days ahead, 3, 2, 1, what the probability or the percentages were for 5 scenarios of the wind gust over their whole system. So you can see 4 days ahead, we had a 90% coverage of at least 45 mile-an-hour winds across the system. And that signal stayed true leading up to the storm. This was a high confidence, high impact forecast, like 4 days ahead. And it locked in. We call this in meteorological circles, it locked into the forecast. Peak wind system gusts, you can see the ensemble mean. This is kind of the scenario we tend to plan off of, was 60, 74, 76, 72 miles an hour. We did have hurricane force winds, which were 74 miles an hour or greater with this storm observed. Here's an example of a graphic on one of our products if their users might see. So what we do is that they have, their users can see this type of information. I'll send an email, we'll have a phone call if it gets high stakes enough, understand this and make decisions around this based on emergency preparedness. That's pretty well, a lot of institutional knowledge that's built into the process. Okay, so what happened during these storms? So there's Finn and Jerry, should have been Tom and Jerry, right? So everywhere in this red shading, these are observed winds that were in excess of 60 miles an hour. And this pink shading here had winds that were around hurricane force or greater, around 80 miles an hour or greater observed. These little dots are showing where there are power outage locations. So you can see it cross-correlated pretty well. Where there are higher winds, you had a greater concentrations of outages. Those of you who had your hand up, you could probably look at where you live on this map and say, oh yeah, I remember this storm. How many of you had some power outage losses from one of these 2 storms in here? Okay, a number of folks. Yeah. But geographically, you notice that there's a lot of variability here. Look at Lamoille County, that some of the deeper valleys, the winds were not strong, but the winds were strong in the downslope wind region because of the meteorological factors. The wind was coming out of the southeast, it comes down the mountain, and it accelerates. So those are kind of the things and nuances that we look at as meteorologists and work with their team on to be better prepared. Okay, so this was a southeast wind event, and I'm just going to put up the last 2 storms on the bottom panel here, but we had other historic storm events when the winds come from the southeast, and they can cause damage in those same kind of hotspot regions you see here. Some of you may remember a tropical storm, which was the remnants of Tropical Storm Philippe in late October of 2019, and then Elliott in 2022. If anyone had lost power in either one of these storms, you recall those? I don't know, put your hand up, just kind of curious here. Now, memory doesn't always serve us well. I see some hands up there. But the 2017 storm did not have winds were as strong, but it was a very wet and warm storm in the first fall storm season of the year. The first fall storm tends to cause more impact than the second or third because of the trimming by Mother Nature hardening the grid, so to speak. So this is an example of just to show how significant hurricane force winds that happened. Everywhere in that red shading, we had hurricane force winds across the area. And then, we're lucky winter chicken dinner, or not so winter. VEC service territory got hit in both the east and the west regions, and parts of New Hampshire Electric Co-op as well. And then coastal Maine got hit exceptionally hard this year. And that's part of our work at Disaster Tech, working with utilities after the fact and helping them learn from each storm as best you can, but also plan through future scenarios. Okay, just coming to an end here. This is looking at now a mosaic, a hotspot map that's looking at all the storms we had from November to January. This is not the whole storm season. This is the wet snow events and the wind events we had. And then, so there's up to 5 events in here. Anywhere in these red shadings had around 5 weather events that could have caused an outage on this. And then everywhere in this blue there was no exceedance on the weather side. Look at the variability just spatially with this. This is what weather can look like. And this is the kind of science that we do to help understand what's happening on the grid. And our work now is looking at this information, looking at system planning, getting at the engineering of the grid to help build better reliability models for the system. Anyone live in any of those red areas and can attest to that here, seeing that? Okay, yep, okay. You guys had, was it 5 or 4? Was that 4? Okay. So the science works. Well, we can't stop the weather from happening when we can try to build the system better as fast as we can, making the right investments. Okay, so I want to toss it over to Peter Rossi to see how they're implementing some of this information and making those hardening investments. Peter.
Good morning. Yeah, the Northern Lights are beautiful, but my team and I were watching the solar storm to make sure that it didn't damage any equipment last night, and we were actually in a yellow level event. It goes on behind the scenes, and I'll talk a little bit about emergency management. And there's nothing like talking about reliability and resiliency on a beautiful sunny day here in Vermont. There's not that many of them. So, you know, there's a little bit of a difference between resiliency and reliability. They do cross, and the activities sometimes serve both purposes. But really what reliability is what we do on a day-to-day basis to make sure that our power stays on, and that if it goes off, we're responding very quickly to those power outages. Resiliency, on the other hand, is long-term investments. Some of the stuff that Dr. Jay Schaefer was talking about today, we want to make sure that we're trying to harden our system so that it can weather these events. Let me tell you, 2023 was a tough year. Okay, we had flooding. We actually started in 2022 with a Christmas storm, so we were out of power during Christmas. I'm a member. I have 4 kids, and it affects me as well. So I take this job very seriously because I don't want to see any outages. Truly, if we could get to 0 outages, that would be great. But the other part of resiliency is how fast can we get the power back on, and then compare that to previous storms, and that's the chart that Jay was showing at the end, is how are we improving, and I have some statistics on that. One thing I want to talk about is reliability. There are multiple statistics that we follow, and it really gives us a way of analyzing how well we're doing on an annual basis. One of them, the most important one, is probably SAIDI, and it's a system average interruption duration index. And what this basically boils down to, it looks like a lot of math, but we take all the minutes or all the hours that of all the outages that happen across our system, and we divide it by the number of years. That's basically what we do. We get an average amount of time that a member can expect to be out on our service territory. Of course, you saw the map. Some places have no outages, some places have more outages or lengthier outages, some places are more remote in Vermont. And so this is where the Vermont Public Utility Commission puts our goal, is at about 390 minutes per year you can expect to be out. That's what their goal is, okay? This is where VEC is, and this is where some years are better than others, depending that. This is taking out major storms. Even if we put the major storm statistics back in, we're still well under that 390. If you take all the co-ops that are in the United States, there's their average right there. So if you went to another co-op somewhere in the United States, you would actually have more power outages or be out of power longer in that during a year on average if you went somewhere else. This doesn't mean that we're going to rest on our laurels. Okay, we take this seriously. We want to drive this number down as far as we can. This is just a quick overview about what causes our outages. Surprisingly, in Vermont, most outages are caused by trees. Okay, Just want that to sink in. And usually it's not the trees that are in the right-of-way, all right? It's usually the tree that falls from outside the right-of-way. We do a great job. Actually, Sarah Packer, our manager of vegetation management, is back here and controls about 50 boots on the ground, multiple pieces of equipment, almost a $4 million budget every year to clear our right-of-ways, make sure that they're accessible. Again, resiliency, right? That way we can get into those right-of-ways easier and repair the wire. But really, when the tree, an 80-foot tall tree, falls in a 25-foot right-of-way, you're going to have an impact. So, what can we do to harden our system to have that tree be able to fall on that line and not actually have any power outages? We do have some equipment failures. Animals are also up there, and you might also notice that company-initiated outages are pretty high, and that's because some of our lines, which we are in the process of replacing, are very brittle, and we have to take the power out and de-energize it in order to fix that. So we actually create those outages, but it's also to upgrade those lines. So what are we doing to improve our reliability on a day-to-day basis? And really this comes down to maintenance, all right? Show of hands, how many people do maintenance on their cars? Okay, all right. This is one of the most complicated machines that humans have ever built, is the power grid. And just like changing your oil on a regular basis, and just like inspecting your tires and making sure things are working, that's what we do that's what we do all the time. So picture down here, this is a bad pole found through our pole inspection program. We have about 55,000 poles on our system, and we inspect 10% of them annually. All right, and we just keep doing that annually. And then when poles are found to be in poor condition, we replace them. Over here, you can see one of the crews clearing a right-of-way. This is nice. You can get up and down in here. That's a nicely cleared right-of-way. But up here, we also take infrared of all of our substations, our major switches, our major sectionalizing devices, and we can kind of see that there's what we call a hot spot right here, where if this could be blown up, you would see that particular device is not sitting in the clasp and creating heat, and that heat can degrade the system over time. So we can go in there and have a planned outage, communicate with our members, and take care of this so that it doesn't fail during like a major event. We also have a control center. Actually, we have two control centers, one in Newport and one in Johnson, Vermont. They both mimic each other. This one is in Johnson, and this is Scott Rockwood, one of our control system operators. And this is the control center in Newport, and we monitor our entire system 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year without fail. These are the men and women that are behind the scenes monitoring our system during Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, wherever it is. We always have somebody monitoring our system and reacting accordingly for outages. We are one of 3 dispatch centers in the entire state. GMP and BED both have dispatch centers, and VEC, and that's pretty cool. So a lot of technology that goes in here, but this way we can respond really quickly. We invest a lot of money in our infrastructure. I was going to say Caroline, she prepared the presentation. We have about a $12 million capital budget, and about 7 to 8 million of that is reinvesting into our system. So we look for areas, remember that SAIDI statistic that I was talking about? We look at that at a local level. Okay, where is those SAIDI values really high? It's called our worst performing circuits. And so we look at those circuits and we say, what can we do to upgrade? And we do that kind of investment. Some of that investment's a little bit easier than other investment, such as going underground or 3-phase wire, but we put a lot of money back in the system, and we want to upgrade it to make sure that it doesn't fail. And also we really diversify our power supply. VEC is a very, very unique cooperative where we border Hydro-Quebec. There's not a lot of co-ops across the United States that have the ability to take power from Canada when we lose power in the United States, or on a power supply side, it's a little bit cheaper to take it from Canada than it is in the United States. But there have been, let's just say a car pole accident could take out a transmission line. In under 5 minutes, we can switch our power supply to be on Hydro-Quebec in that emergency and keep all the lights on. And so we have expanded our use of Hydro-Quebec this year. Actually, we finally finalized it. And of course, we also have community solar. We are joint partners with GMP for the Kingdom Community Wind. So we are diversifying our power supply in order to make sure that we have different ways of keeping the lights on. You know, what are we doing for resiliency? And this is, again, just one example. I was given 10 minutes to speak today, so I want to keep it there. Plus the raffles are probably the more fun part of this. But, you know, we've had 13 FEMA level events since 2010, all right, plus a number of, so Finn and Jerry were declared FEMA level events, so we can get money for not only paying for the storm, but investment into our infrastructure, so we submit projects. And we've had about 16 of these projects since 2017, and have gained 6.1, maybe $6.2 million capital investment. And I have my last slide is a case study about about one of those projects and what that money invested in the system can really do for resiliency. But one of the things here is I just wanted to kind of just show you this, is that say you have your distributed energy resources up here, and you know power is normally flowing to this house here, okay, through this little green line, right? And we have an outage here, but then we invest in installing a little tie switch. So I'll just show you that. We close in the tie switch. We close it in remotely from our control center, and boom, we still have power. While we go and make repairs over here, it brings that. We call it tie lines or tie switches, but those types of investments, those are kind of expensive pieces of equipment, but when installed properly, they work really well. What I'm looking for in the future, Rebecca mentioned the next 5 years, how about computers automatically closing in that tie switch? Okay, that's sort of where we're headed. Doesn't take out the human aspect at all, but it actually would make this a little bit faster. Another thing that we're doing is leveraging technology. So even though this is part of our maintenance plan, remember that first slide, how resiliency and reliability sort of overlap in certain areas? This is one of the areas that it overlaps. So this is actual drone, like a drone had flown these two lines here, and the information goes back to this particular company that we're using, and they have first-class line workers that are analyzing every single picture that's coming back. And then they make these little polygons saying, hey, there's a little issue here. Well, that issue, you're not gonna see from the ground, okay? Now we're able to make this repair, probably do this energized without an outage, but we can plan for this repair, and this doesn't fall apart during the storm. So now that line and that pole is resilient for the next storm that comes in because we know it's on this line and we can check it out as we're doing it. So we're leveraging this. Even from the time that we've done this pilot to now implementing the full Monty for this maintenance plan this year, they're already using AI to analyze these pictures, and the models are getting so good that we can almost do real time. I'm telling you, within the next year or two, we could almost do real time analysis on these pictures and be able to already have a maintenance plan or a plan to repair these sorts of events by the time the drone lands. That's where we're going in the next 5 years. So when you say it's exciting, it really is exciting. The other thing is we have a high level of emergency response. I joke that you know, my wife told me the other day that a lot of people are like, oh wow, you know, your husband's really good with planning and he must be really wonderful to have around the house. Well, I'm never around when the emergency happens, so she handles all of that stuff because we're in the office. We're working with mutual aid crews. Most of the E&O team is here, and we're working almost 24 hours during an event. We have to take a little bit of a break overnight, but you know, we follow the incident command system, so we're able to interact with other agencies, and we have a plan that we enact, and it has helped with storm response tremendously over the last 5 years. So that storm Elliott, does anyone remember the Christmas storm? That's Elliott, and we call it the Grinch storm. That storm was about 40% stronger than Storm Felipe. You could see that Finn was a little bit stronger and Jerry was a little bit stronger. Well, between those two events, we actually restored power faster than we did in Storm Felipe. And a lot of that has to do with our emergency response. So this is my last slide. I just wanted to run down a case study about how effective the FEMA money in investing into resiliency becomes. So over in West Charleston, how many of you are near West Charleston? Okay, so we have a substation over there, and it has this 1A, means it's the main three-phase feeder that comes out. And so we analyzed this. This particular FEMA investment was from Storm Felipe, okay? And so we actually have data on this now. So the data that I have here are from 2012 to 2018, and then 2018 to 2024 after we did the investment. And so it affects, this particular circuit affects all of these towns up here. And what we did is we spent $400,000. That's about 75% of the total cost came from FEMA. And we added one of those sectionalizing devices, those high switches, okay? We replaced wire with what we call tree wire or covered wire. That way branches and trees can actually lay up against it and it will not create an outage. And we moved some wire from the right-of-way, from the trees to the road, so we can access it with bucket trucks a lot easier. That makes restoration a lot faster. And then we retired some lines that weren't needed and just got it out of the way and returned the right-of-ways to nature. When you compare before and after, we reduced the number of outages by 39%, but more importantly, we reduced outage time for this entire circuit by 98%. And that's a $400,000 investment. We've received almost $6 million. So we are really trying to invest in our system and make it as resilient as possible and prevent power outages. That's all I have.
Okay, we have time for some Q&A, and that can be questions for our two panelists if you want to ask them questions, or it can be general questions about the co-op. And do we have microphones for the, all right, this is our expert tech, Fred, who's getting a couple microphones for us here. All right, you've had your hand up for a moment. Why don't you go ahead?
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. You talked earlier about the expected growth in the distribution system. And perhaps this is covered elsewhere, but where does that put the capacity on the distribution system and either reconductoring, retensioning, or repowering the existing circuits and that future? How generalized are your load centers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was about the growth that we're expecting and what kind of stress that would put on the distribution system in terms of capacity. And the answer is, one, we're still working on that, and I would say that there's some areas where we have plenty of capacity, and other areas we do not have plenty of capacity. And we also know, because that growth is going to be through the adoption of consumer choices, that the growth also won't be consistent. It's not predictable like a data center coming in and you know exactly. It's tens of thousands of people making individual decisions, and then that drives the growth. So we are working on a few things. One, Peter mentioned the infrastructure side. I'll mention the technology side, and then I'll let you answer from an infrastructure perspective. So from a technology perspective, we're spending a lot of time thinking about load management and how we can manage some of that load so that we can avoid infrastructure investment where we think there's other strategies that can mitigate that. And the way I think about this is, in your home right now, and this is the way our circuits work, if in your home, if your electrical system is built so that if everything turned on at the same time, you would have enough capacity to be able to run all of those things. And that's the way our grid works too. The possibility is, what if you could ensure not everything runs at the same time? So what if in your home you would always know that your dryer and your EV would never charge at the same time? You might not have to build that additional infrastructure. And that's how we're thinking about it on the grid as well. That requires some technology investments on our part, some participation by the consumer to help us manage that, and then that communication system pathway. So that's one strategy. I'll let you talk about the infrastructure side.
Yeah, so it was a great question. The interesting part about cooperatives is we build in that capacity already into our substations. So usually our transformers are sized to about 60% of the current load. So that means that we have enough capacity to see it coming so that we can invest in, say, upgrading a substation or upgrading smaller wire over time to lessen the impact. One of the goals that we do have is some of this smaller wire that might be out there definitely has to be increased, and we have goals on that. I have goals on that, given to me by Rebecca on the board, and we're meeting those goals, and that will also help with that capacity. So it's hand in hand, and the gentleman that's not here today is Sorrel Bruner, who really is in this space of trying to manage the load so we can minimize the investment in our grid. Used to be the manager of engineering, so he and I are very close in leveraging more technology, and he understands the infrastructure part. So I think we're coming up with a really good strategy. Speaking, speaking almost every day. So.
Are you bumping up against any short circuit rating limitations with existing substation infrastructure?
Not really. Not really. But there are areas, say, where sugar makers have come in. So Eden substation, or the Eden area, they've had a lot of sugar makers, and those are smaller transformers. That is an area that we are actually upgrading this year. So that was a capacity limitation that we reached, but we've been planning on that for about 2 years. So we had plenty of time to set aside the right capital dollars, and we're going to get that taken care of this year. And then we're going to have that headroom for whatever growth happens in that area after. So.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So we had floods in Johnson this past summer, and I understand the co-op didn't flood, but it was close. What are the prospects of the co-op flooding in the near future?
That's a great question. It wasn't close. The biggest problem with where the Johnson facility is was getting the trucks stuck because of the road closures and just the road closures and the flooding that actually happened. John Martin had done an analysis of our facility, and it would be fine on a 500-year flood. So the actual building and facility is fine, and we were able to run off of generator power. We have 2 massive generators that can both power individually the entire system. We were running on that, and we were able to, through our incident command system, get down to Johnson and move the trucks to higher ground so that we can respond. So as far as the facility is concerned, we are always looking at different options, but that particular facility is not really in any danger. Yeah.
You said it's in the 500-year flood. We had a 500-year flood.
Right, we're still above the 500-year flood plain.
But are floods going to get worse in the future?
Jay?
That's me. So we know that rainfall events are going to be more concentrated and heavier, but that doesn't always correlate one-to-one with flooding. We have to be careful. In the science in modeling local flooding response, you need to take into account the soil distribution, the shape of the topography, and really run more precise modeling of that. And also to get the flooding we had in July, it was really wet. The precursor conditions ahead of the storm is actually probably the most important characteristic. If you have that much rainfall ahead of a drought, you're not going to have an issue. So the long and short of it is that if you look at the probability is increasing slightly there. There aren't standards that have been updated by NOAA and others yet that are going to be published in the next 3 years that look at what's called a non-stationary climate. But those are still going to be more meteorologically based by rainfall than flooding level. I guess in other words, you'd have to really look at sponsoring a project, Peter, that we could do to sample that risk assessment to really come up with putting numbers on it. But it's not like a 500-year flood is going to turn into be like 3 times more likely in a future climate. It's still on a creep, but these black swan binary events, there's always a probability of them happening. Probability is just increasing by a slight margin as we go into the future.
Yes, sir.
Is your discussion and other sources indicate the likelihood of increased winds? Increased winds, and which the source of renewable energy through the wind. I know that there was a time at least when the capacity was there, but the distribution capacity hadn't caught up with it, so the turbines just were quiet for quite a bit. And I wonder how that's being addressed.
So there's a couple wind farms that we have contracts with in the Northeast Kingdom, Kingdom Community Wind and Sheffield. And there was, there have been some challenges around that area of the grid being constrained. So sort of a lot of our service territory in the Northeast part, Northeast Kingdom, there is not as much load as there is generation. So between the wind farms and Coventry methane project and hydro generators, sometimes there's more, actually most times there's more energy generated than being used locally, and it gets exported. And sometimes those export lines also get overloaded, and so what I think you were talking about is then those wind farms get curtailed, saying we don't have a place to put that power, basically. And this is a shared problem with most Vermont utilities, because most of them are impacted in some way, shape, or form because of their various generation sources. We've been doing a lot of work at shared utility, and last year, 2023, we experienced only 10% of our historical curtailment from what we've experienced before. And there's also a plan in place to upgrade a transmission line in the western side of the state that will impact that even more. So I expect that will be a problem we'll continue to manage. We're in an okay spot right now. And I think that as we continue to build particularly more local renewable generation, that will pop up, not just in that area, but likely other areas. And we'll just keep working on it, keep working on that problem.
I have a couple questions. One of the questions is related to decentralized power. I see we're spending a lot of energy on grid infrastructure, and we're spending a lot of energy on improving infrastructure between here and Hydro-Quebec. But what are we doing as far as infrastructure for decentralized power within Vermont? And in particular, what are we doing about hydro generation within Vermont to improve those resources that are already available to us? And how come we're spending so much money on large grid infrastructure when we are fully capable of generating power within the state, and we're not focusing on hydroelectric in particular, that is a more constant renewable energy power source?
I can start. So a lot there in the package, so I'll keep it relatively high level. First thing is Hydro-Quebec and our work there is a reliable renewable base load. And we don't have the reliable renewable base load in Vermont. We have enough generation, as you mentioned, when the sun is shining, the wind blowing, and we're generating, there's not a problem there. And we do utilize hydro in Vermont that is available. We have that actually tied in where Rebecca just mentioned that when load is low, the generation is high, or we're moving what we call the block load that's moving to Hydro-Quebec. we actually keep the generation of the local hydro on, feeding the grid here. So we have made those changes, and we are using as much of that local power as we can. But in the end, reliable, renewable base load is what we need to run with natural stuff. So that's the technology that's not there.
I would just add that it's an and, not an or, and so we are doing both of those things. So we are working on hydro-Quebec. We know we're going to need more power over time. We don't own any generation, so it's really through contracts. But we are absolutely in support of hydro relicensing or expansion where it makes sense. And we are also continuing to do work. There's a project we've got going on in the islands where during shoulder seasons we actually have a lot of renewable generation, a lot of solar, and it's creating some voltage problems on the grid. So what we're trying to do is solve for that so that we can continue to support local renewable generation. So we are. It's hard. There's so many things. It's hard to talk about them all. But just know that both of those continue to be really important strategies.
Well, related to that is sort of residential backup power, use of battery, testing power, that type of thing. Being used to grid interface to provide decentralized backup power. And we're not offering any incentives. So why are we not doing that? Instead, we're investing very high capital in long distance grid infrastructure.
Well, we do actually have incentives for those, and we have over 100 batteries that are in our incentive program. We don't provide them free. They're very expensive. It could be an expensive option. So for folks who have them, we absolutely want to participate with them and use it for peak management and support their energy infrastructure. It's costly. So right now it's an option available to folks who can afford them, which is not a large part of our membership. We hope our incentive helps. We certainly have seen some good participation in that. And we hope the cost goes down as technology improves, because we do think that again, is an important strategy. And at the same time, we're doing utility scale batteries and trying to think about all of the different ways in a cost-effective way that's cost-effective for our membership as a whole, that we can support that, both peak management and then also that resiliency.
I had only one other question. That's a financial question. I see we had $100 million in debt load, and I saw we had a $45 million pretty good return investment that we're getting. I was wondering what it costs to service that network.
Interest has certainly been growing over the past years and has not been going down as quickly as projected. We've been running about 6.5% on line of credit. I can tell you I just closed a long-term debt at 5.78%, and that was pretty much, we competitively bid between our banks, and that was the best that we could get today. On average over time, our interest rate, our weighted interest rate is actually not bad, right? Because we've had higher interest rates in the past, lower when we had those great years of very small interest rates. So we're about, I think our weighted average right now is about 4.87 on that debt.
This is Caroline Masha, our CFO. Thank you, Karen. Yes, sir.
Maybe I missed it, but I want to follow up in terms of the storage function. Is that rely entirely in your policy for individuals, or is the company thinking of larger storage batteries for using the excess power and making it available with
So we've already invested in one larger battery. We've been, I don't want to say, we're using it as a case study in our Heinsberg substation, or near our Heinsberg substation, really to reduce peaks. And we've been gaining knowledge on how to use that system. And we're currently installing a joint venture ownership. That one is leased. This is going to be a joint ownership, and we're finalizing construction this summer up in our Troy region to do exactly what you just said, sir, is to take the excess generation from Kingdom Community Wind and store it there in the battery to be used at a different time. So again, this is newer technology. Neither GMP nor us have a ton of experience in this. So again, we're using this as a way of building that strategy out of how do we do large-scale storage across our territory as effectively, efficiently, and cost-effectively as possible. So yes, we're in that range. Now, as far as batteries go, I said this on the webinar, is that from a backup power perspective, if you can afford it, that's awesome. They're really expensive. We support it. We have programs around it. We're continuously trying to find out ways to drive down costs, but honestly, if you're just talking about a backup power system, a $900 or $700 generator from Home Depot or something is going to be your best bet. And a little bit of a Vermont to get through the outage. I understand that. But like Rebecca keeps saying, the next 5 years is really interesting. And when those prices finally hit that inflection point where it becomes affordable for all, you're going to see that impact. But the key thing, the cool thing, is VEC will be ready because we've been on the leading edge of this, and so we'll have all of that knowledge when that switch happens, and we're going to have that back power in this house.
We have a bunch more questions here. How about we do like 5 more questions and then we'll call it. So, Jason, yeah, go ahead. Remember the microphone.
Right. Just one comment that aren't most of those generators from Home Depot seat fuel. Yeah, I mean, do we really want to be going after that? If we're trying to reduce everything, that's just a comment. Listening to the battery storage issue, do you see down the road VEC having a program where people can actually, in a smart home, program in when they want to charge their electric vehicle between the hours of, I need to charge it between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m., okay? And then they automatically, the system will kick in at the best, lowest, usage time. I want to run my washing machine at a certain time. I want to download a program on Netflix at a certain time. Do you see that sort of scheduling coming in with perhaps better battery storage option?
Very soon. We're working on that right now. That's the software package that just sounded so dramatic. But that's happening right now. That's the work that we're doing and the information that we're gathering from our system, so that you basically just tell the system, the vision is this: I need my car fully charged or 3/4 charged by 7:30 a.m. Let the system figure out how to make sure that all the devices are being controlled in your house to make sure that that car is charged when power consumption is at its lowest. Yes.
And it would be relatively affordable, so that this isn't just for the Lexus owners?
Well, that's my hope, because I have 4 kids and I don't have a battery in my house either. But yes, I'm assuming that the market is going to, like I said, the inflection point of the market is going to drive down prices, and that will actually happen. So.
I would just say on that, right now that technology exists with individual devices. So with an EV, you can schedule it to say start charging at 10, or I want to leave at 7 a.m., I'd like it fully charged, and it will manage that. And a lot of new smart washers will do the same thing. What's not readily available yet is 2 things about what that future you described, which I'm hopeful that will be our future. One is that sort of coordination between all of the devices, and there's some early tech in that, but it's not quite there yet. And then the other piece is the cost effectiveness, which again, we're not quite there yet either. And we, again, as Peter said, we're watching it, we're hopeful, we sort of experiment with some stuff now and then, but I think, again, that 5-year horizon, I'm hopeful we'll start to see some of that. Are you, hopefully the microphone, great.
This is just a comment, and I just wanted to say thank you to the crew. We're one of the households that were on power for the 3 storm, and there seems to be a great improvement in communication as far as being able to talk to somebody in member services and getting an ETA on restoration, and it was really very much appreciated and very much improved.
Thank you. There's some of our folks who spend long days on the phones are right behind you, and I know appreciated your comment, so thank you. All right, there was one up here, and then there's one back there in the orange. Up here first, I think, Jake, and then one in the orange, and then one
Thank you. I think as Rebecca mentioned, the rate increase this year. I meant to bring a bill and I forgot, but I believe on recent bills, there was a separate line item that shows reflects rate increase. Why is that separately itemized and not rolled into the regular rate? Have you not yet been approved by the PUC? Okay.
Yes, that's exactly right. So we file for the rate and we implement it, and then it goes through an approval process at the PUC, which is underway now and is scheduled to end in June. It's a long 6-month process.
So you're presenting the case to the PUC now.
Correct.
But you're allowed to.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
And so what will happen is if they approve it as is, then it just moves into the regular portion of their bill, and if they change it in any way, then we go through a refund process. It only goes one direction. It doesn't go. They don't approve it more. It's over. It would only be whatever.
So in effect, that rate increase has already been implemented to us.
Correct.
Even though the PUC hasn't approved it yet.
Correct. And what we submitted to the PUC and why we implemented it already is because it's a reflection of our costs and our revenue needs for this year. And so if we didn't implement it at the start of the year, then we have to pack it into the second half of the year, and that's not what anybody wants either. So that's why we do it that way, even though it's a little clunky, and adding it as a separate line item just keeps that transparency.
Thanks.
Mr. Rossi, George Piant from the city of Newport. You mentioned earlier the 25-foot right-of-way clearing, which you guys have been doing a great job on that. You did it in Newport, and you really did a super job on it. But you also mentioned 80-foot trees that are beyond that 25. Who pays for that when it falls and lands on that line, but may not have broken the line, but is still hanging on the line?
We do, for the most part. So let me clarify. We have a 50-foot right away. What I was saying is from the center line to the edge is 25 feet, so it's not like 12 and a half feet. And we do have a robust program where we take down all the widowmakers and the danger trees and everything that might be on the side to prevent that failure. But what happens when you open up the right of way, sometimes the weaker trees are now exposed to the wind, and it's just, it's a balancing act, right, between wanting to have trees, wanting to have, power. Trees and power just don't work well together. So the next question is going to be, why don't you just put everything underground? It's really expensive to do that. But we do have a strategic plan for undergrounding in areas that might be more susceptible, like Jay Schaefer was talking about. Those maps are not just maps that are nice color coded. They're actually areas, as Jay pointed out. This is a distribution line. Here's 4 storms that has hit that same line. Let's go and attack that and put that underground.
So thank you for the coloring also. It stayed right in the lines.
Yeah, it's very nice.
All right, one last question. Yes, your bright orange shirt. right over there. See, yeah.
Derby area that you return to nature, the lawn site you retire.
Yeah, we didn't need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just curious if you looked into if there was any kind of state, local funds, tax refunds, or maybe grants that you can get because you're returning that to nature.
That's a good question. This is one of those times I'll say I'm going to have to follow up on that because I don't know. You typically, when we retire a line and taking it out, it just goes back to nature. We don't really look for any grants or payment for that. It's more of just letting those particular trees grow back. But your point's well taken, and I'll take that back. So I don't have a good answer for you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Yeah.
We're originally from Pennsylvania, and when they did the strippings, the coal strippings, they replaced it. They did programs to put it back in the nature.
Yeah, reclamation. Yeah.
Reclamation, and it was really coveted. We got a lot of tax refunds and whatnot. So.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And my father-in-law was actually a reclamationist in Wyoming, so I know about that. I just didn't know if there was any grants for us to do that. So appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. I just want to offer that, we're always available for questions. You can email them in. You can give us a call. We really love to have these conversations. As you can, I hope, tell, we're really passionate about this work and love to talk about this, and particularly want to make sure our members feel like you understand what the co-op is doing for you and for our broader membership. So a big thank you. I would like thank you, Jay and Peter. That was fantastic. And the very last piece, which is our fun auction, I will bring back up Carolyn Mesha, our Chief Financial Officer, and Jeff Bickford, our leader of People and Culture, and they are going to administer the